Well, so in the past, I have covered the EIS and their anti racist, quote unquote, educational resources. And for a time, they remained relatively the same, unchanged in terms of any updates. But in the past month or so, it seems, in the wake of, George Floyd and the exploitation it's followed, premeditated if you ask me, they have since updated their education resources, and there's a hell of a lot more than was previously accounted for. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to go through them all in the one video. Yeah, I initially was only going to make this video because I came across something on Twitter. But it has to be said, some of the things that are being shoehorned into our education system, unbeknownst to the public, and on the other hand, the stuff that these people are campaigning to get into the education system should be cause for concern. It really should, because they classify this all as quote-unquote anti-racism. And many people will say that anti-racism is anti-white, and people that are in favour of anti-racism or don't really understand what anti-racism quote-unquote is will think that that's what a white supremacist or a far-right but bigot would come away with. But the reality of the matter is everything that they say and do is anti-white, because the problem for these people is whiteness. That is the problem. And a lot of the rhetoric that they espouse is rather communistic. It seems to fit in rather conveniently with all the other bands of communist groups that are emerging all across the Western world. These so-called social justice wankers, human rights defenders that they unironically name themselves as, whatever you will. For example, this was on Twitter. Dr. Gurnam Singh. In preparation for a talk at UAL tomorrow on anti-racism, I put together the below the graph. Please share if you feel it has some value. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. So in this image, of course, if I can expand it in size, we get the following. White supremacy accepts and in some cases promotes theories designed to justify white dominance and racial hierarchy, typically associated with scientific racism, fear, loathing of the non-white other, which may be overt or covert, characterised by the white gaze, whatever that is, belief that we live in a meritocracy. So that by default, right there, I must be a white supremacist then, because forgive me for thinking that we're supposed to live in a meritocracy, but the problem with these people, as I pointed out on numerous occasions, and the big brains out there like Sargon have also pointed out when they choose to, that the fact that there is more whites in the country, it stands to reason more positions will be held by whites. But because it's not equal on paper, so for example, around about 4 to 5% of the population in 2011 and onwards was non-white in Scotland, so there should be 4 to 5% of non-whites in positions of power. But because they're not filled by non-whites in these positions, that somehow indicates racism, etc. The fact of the matter is, if 100 people apply for the same job, 99 of them are white, 1 is black, stands to reason that somebody that is white will get the job. That's a meritocracy. It's I mean, but anyway, an critical favourable view of empire and colonialism, the white man's burden, subscribes to scientific racism because these people believe that race doesn't exist. They believe that white people created the idea of race, but even if that was in any way, shape or form true, I beg to differ on that front, but let's just say it was. Ethnicity is still a thing, but they won't even give us that. Whiteness, etc. Whiteness and its proxies functions of badge and honour. White privilege is rationalised as the natural order. And I mean, this is another thing that pisses me off, because we live in a white country. It was built by whites. It's a white country. So theoretically, we should be getting preferential treatment, because if you go anywhere else in the world, the bulk of countries that are made up of other groups where whites aren't in the country or are a minority, they don't receive preferential treatment. It's not a meritocracy there. In China, the Chinese are prioritised. They get preferential treatment. In Japan, it's the same. It's absolutely the same in Vietnam, everywhere. In the African world as well. Absolutely everywhere. But it's a problem here. Onus is on black people to accept their place. White indifference, passionate defender of Western universalism, academic freedom of the right to offend, belief in a meritocracy but also recognise that some deserving and disadvantaged people need help, characterised by a refusal to take a serious look at racism and views anti-racist initiatives and ideological endeavours linked to cultural wars and political correctness. Self-concept is based on being rational and moral, which results in avoidance of responsibility for discriminatory behaviour, willing to tolerate, fetishise or pity the non-white other, happy to make tokenistic gestures. Whiteness is denied, so it functions as an absent, invisible, mythical norm, leaving white privilege intact. Onus is again on black people to build up their quote-unquote resilience. We also have Belief that racism is real and that it is a product of prejudicial power, prejudice plus power, white awareness. So here we go again. They've redefined what racism entails. They've redefined the word racism to suit their own fucking beliefs. And people are scooping this up. Hook, line, and sinker. Belief that racism is real and that it is product of prejudice plus power. No, it's the belief that a group of people are beneath you or subordinate based on their skin tones, based on their race, based on their racial characteristics. It's not what the fuck you want it to be. Characterized by a desire to critically reflect, onus is the operative word, critical race theory, etc. Functions like a mental illness that only white people have, cats, hence focus on discovery and unconscious bias and cognitive distortions. Only white people. What? I don't know. Desire to engage with black issues and people, but only in limited spaces. This may result of feeling guilty of historic racism and/or a desire to make some amends to historic racism. Every group of people on the planet, at some point in time, have been slaves or vice versa. But it's a white man fucking bad here in Scotland. White man bad, yeah. White privilege is recognised and becomes a source of shame and embarrassment. You like that? You would like that, wouldn't you? Onus is on white people to overcome unconscious bias. It doesn't find group preference. It's not unconscious bias. And it should be subconscious. Racism, white allyship. Racism is a complex interaction between structural, ideological, institutional, and behavioural processes characterised by the desire to take responsibility. You get the point. So, on this guy's Twitter, for example, responses, this graphic will be very useful for initiating dialogue on this so-called complex issue. It's complex because you've made it complex. You've got all angles covered, don't you? I'd like to echo Javier or Jasvier. Thank you. Was your talk recorded? Many schools also looking at the curriculums with a view to true inclusivity. True inclusivity, define it. It's what you want it to be. It's all about power, isn't it? All these different groups, though. For example, we've got campaign to see South Asian British history on the UK national curriculum. We've also got education spanning the sector from diverse backgrounds, striving for action towards anti-racist communities in education. Anti-racist communities, they've even got their own fucking education community, So, going through some of these, it says here that we've got addressing inclusion, effectively challenging racism in schools. I have in the past gone over this. The video is called Disgraceful Intersectional Marxism Targets Scottish Primary Schools. And in this document, I'll pull it up quickly. When we come to the terminology or their glossary, understanding the terminology around race and racism can help develop confident and effective responses to incidents. The definition below includes various phrases used with the resource alongside other concepts which may be useful. More information about racism and how it operates can be found in the publication Changing the Race Equality Paradigm, Equality My Arsehole. BEME, of course, we all know what that means. Cultural, ethnic group, ethnocentrism. A tendency to believe that your own ethnic group and its cultural beliefs, traditions and practices are of central importance and to make judgmental assumptions about other ethnic groups based on that belief. Now again, this is all targeted, which I'm coming to, which is obvious anyway, for all that. This is all targeted at white people. This is all targeted, in this instance, Scottish children, Scottish teenagers or adolescents and students. Every group has in-group preference. It's something they can't admit because it kind of somewhat debunks the argument, that we're all the same. Because we can't be if we've all got in-group preference and whatnot. But it's only a problem when we have it. A tendency to believe. So it's not based on anything according to these people. Oh, no. But it's fine for them to have collectivization. It's fine for them to prioritize and have preferential treatment for their own. It's not all right for us because it's all about decolonizing Scotland. It's all about deconstructing the idea of whiteness. Anyway, it says hidden biases, prejudice that is not outwardly deliberate but nonetheless affects attitudes and behaviours occurs because the person responsible has not consciously understood or acknowledged how stereotypes affect their own perceptions and actions. I feel like I'm a fucking lab rat at this point with all this crap that's going on. That's why it's starting to feel like we are lab rats. They're trying to deconstruct who we are and they all sit around their little progressive tables thinking they know what the fuck they're talking about. Pardon my French, but this stuff really does irritate me to no end. Let's just get into beyond a joke. It really is. And I'm racism, prejudice against people from ethnic backgrounds which have been racialized, of course, and this is another thing. We racialize these people. Race doesn't exist. We racialize them. Yeah. So only white people can be racist. This is the thing that I'm trying to get across. These are the same people and this is the same ideology that is the foundations of the hate crime bill and all the hate crime legislation past and present. It's all based and predicated on this sort of belief system. White privilege, of course, advantages which automatically apply to a person because they are white, but it's just fucking bullshit. It's absolute bullshit, and given the current climate, it's even more bullshit because of all the things that have been put in place in order to combat what you classify as white privilege. With your diversity quotas, and BAME shortlists, etc. There's nothing out there for white people. There's nothing out there for white students. Absolutely nothing. Bottom of the fucking barrel. Whiteness is one of a number of factors which can confer advantage or disadvantage, such as class, gender, ability, language, citizenship, and education. At its most basic, the advantage arises from white people being well represented in all areas of life. Representation, this is again, power. It's power they're talking about here, not representation. That's just a namby-pamby refraining of the word, or rephrasing of the word even. Xenophobia, we all know what that supposedly means. Intersectionality, the cancerous theory that's never been proved, the far leftist theory that they love to cling to. Get the point, it's all about microaggressions and race. That doesn't the concept of a racial group is derived and outdated. You know, that's what it says. The current use of the terms race and racial developed because of disproved notions. Disproved notions? I mean, are you first dogs? Anyway, so moving on. We've also got celebrating difference, exploiting stereotypes, and anti-racism. The anti-racist educator, I've been through that numerous times. Absolute cancer. The black curriculum. Talking about race. Black Lives Matter at School is based in the USA. It offers a range of resources and links for teachers which can be adapted to the Scottish context. Exploring equality and diversity in Scotland, past and present. A colourful heritage. Primary schools resource pack for... Insight report. How do BAME young people in Scotland perceive and experience secondary school? Oh, how do they perceive it? Oh, my heart fucking bleeds. It really does. How do they perceive it? Get on with it. Like the rest of us had to. So, for example, this is one of their links. A. Adams Bairns. Exploring equality and diversity in Scotland's past and present. What makes you Scottish? Okay. What makes you Scottish? Well, Scottish people might be a bit diluted, whatnot, with Anglos, etc. But we are a people. We're an ethnicity. We're an ethnicity. But this gets no mention during this. Not one mention. For example, it says here, students will investigate the concept of Scottishness, or Scottish identity, and express their understanding of its complexity through group discussions. This activity is an exploration of students' personal understanding of the concept of Scottish identity. It does not explore nationalism, nor promote a specific national identity, but looks to highlight the complexity and diversity involved in concepts of Scottishness. Now, I've covered in the past, and I've got the video on my channel, where they talk about wanting to create a new national identity for Scotland. It's not built on race. We need to decode, dismantle and decolonise the national identity of Scotland, because the national identity of Scotland, the stereotype of you, well, is a white man, a ginger white man on many occasions with a kilt, etc. We need to get rid of that because it offends the browns and the blacks of this world that we're importing year on year despite being really racist and white supremacists, but you know, whatever. So it says here that we need to highlight the complexity and diversity involved in concepts of Scottishness. There is no diversity in Scottishness. This is what's happening here, man, and this is what they're wanting to teach the children. This is what students are learning. I said in the past that I've got no issue with people living in our country as long as it's acknowledged that we're native, but the fact of the matter is that's been erased to accommodate. That's the namby-pamby way of looking at it, to accommodate these people, but it's more insidious than that. Every angle is covered. It's an attack on a constant fucking basis, man. The same format could be used within other nation states, for example. What makes you Irish? What makes you Pakistani? The notion that our national identity is enriched by a diverse range of influences and experiences is further explored in the theme immigration, past and present. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Student sheet, I've got it opened up, I'll get to it in a second. So what to do? Brainstorm the question, what makes you Scottish? Ideas might include name, place of birth, language, where you live, how long you've lived here, whether you contribute to your economy. It's got nothing to do with contributions. Nothing at all. Because even a benefit dosser is still just as Scottish as somebody that is making peas, if you will. We're all Scottish, it's in our blood. It's who we are as a people. Scotland was created by Scots. It was not created on the back of diversity nor multiculturalism. Picts and fucking Scots. So, this is their document for this particular graph. And as I said, I mean, I could spend all night talking about this stuff. I'll leave the links. I just can't bear going through it all. I will go through some of it, but this for example, says, what makes you Scottish? There's no mention of DNA, heritage, nothing like that. No, nothing at all, because race doesn't exist. Whiteness is the problem. We need to deconstruct, decolonize, and decode the idea of whiteness. This is starting to make sense yet. We need to eradicate the concept of Scottish people being white for the greater good, apparently. And how do they go about that? Well, this is how they do it. What makes you Scottish? Some of the choices they've got. I am Scottish because I was born here. Because I live here. Because I have a Scottish accent. Because my father was born here. Because I go to school in Scotland. Because my name begins with Mac or MC. Because I or my family contribute. I'm Scottish because I support Scotland's international sports teams. I'm Scottish because ... Arrange the above statements in the order you feel to be the most least true, relevant, or important using the diamond ranking. I mean, this is ridiculous. Absolutely no mention whatsoever of who we are via DNA. Nothing. It doesn't get a mention because it has to be avoided at all costs. Going through this website a bit more, you've got prejudice and discrimination, and of course it says down here, race, brackets, of course. Moving on. Another group is Intercultural Youth Scotland. They previously came out with a study based on perceptions and opinions. Yet these opinions and perceptions were picked up by the media and they ran with it as if this was clear-cut proof that racism in Scotland, in schools in particular, did exist. So they're coming out with another brainstormer soon. Can't wait. And of course, Kajida Mohammed, as you can see on screen, has retweeted this. The same Kajida Mohammed who I've made a video on in the past talking about teaching in a diverse Scotland, where she now teaches the children not about diversity, but but about whiteness and white privilege. So they say here that they have been gathering the perceptions and experiences of young black and brown Scots during COVID-19 and their concerns on predicted grades leaving school. Calories of COVID is coming soon. Partnership with the Anti-Racist Cancer and of course Same Group. Another group that I think people should really think about looking into. The Anti-Racist Educator, of course, is probably the worst out of the whole lot of them, it has to be said. But about here that they're looking forward to decolonising the curriculum. Educators, we'd love to hear what you have already been doing to make your classroom safe, inclusive and empowering for pupils of colour. So you can tune in, I presume, on YouTube. On Thursday the 16th, Anti-Racist Educator Collective, decolonising the curriculum. What is anti-racism? What is decolonisation? Critical questions about old texts, inclusive classroom practices. This whole ideology is predicated on being anti-white. It's really that simple.